after going through, I asked Greg to do some little research and try to identify at our normal trustee meetings on Thursdays, we have a resident comments section. And I asked Greg to kind of go through and try to find out if anybody was out there timing how much time we allocated to each individual speaker. I was familiar with a number of them, like Hamilton County, I think is at 2 minutes per person. Cincinnati City Council is at 2 minutes per person, and they limit their total comments to 30 minutes in Cincinnati City Council. With others, Blue Ash, Amberley, Anderson, they're at 3 minutes. Madeira, Delhi, and Coleraine are at 5. And I asked Greg to go back and give me some numbers from the June meeting. Our first speaker spoke for 29 minutes and 30 seconds. Our second speaker spoke for 18 minutes and 43 seconds. And I think because our second speaker couldn't ask questions, he decided to stop speaking. And our third speaker spoke for 22 minutes. Look, we have a great staff here. I wouldn't trade the staff we have for any other staff. They do an excellent job. If you have questions, if you're a resident, and you have questions, and you come to the staff will get those questions answered. The section for resident comments was set up long before I got here. When I got here, they wanted to limit the time at that time to 3 minutes. And I objected wholeheartedly because I thought if a resident wants to come in and speak, they have an opportunity to speak, that's great. We should give them that opportunity. I think that these kind of numbers where someone can sit here and come in here and speak for a half hour violates both the spirit and the intent of what we were intending to do. I had Doug look this up, and from the Ohio Attorney General's Sunshine Law Handbook, which is the Bible for transparency in local government, and I quote, "The Open Meetings Act does not provide or prohibit attendees the right to be heard at meetings." So it's not like we're in any way by changing these rules violating any rules from the Attorney General's standpoint. So I would like to make a motion that we limit the comments, and only comments, to 4 minutes, which is a compromise between, if I throw out the lowest ones of 2 and 2, it's a compromise between 3 and 5. 4 minutes, and those 4 minutes, those were for people only that have signed up prior to the meeting, the beginning of the meeting. I think Amberley has some restrictions about, they have to have a written request by noon of meeting date, but I think it's kind of ridiculous, but I'm not in Amberley, so I really, that doesn't matter to me. But I would suggest that anybody who signs up prior to the meeting that wishes to speak, they're given the opportunity for 4 minutes to speak, for comments only, no questions. I think a number of communities specifically say no questions. If you have questions, if you're a resident, you have questions, and you come to the township, you will get your questions answered. Our staff is fantastic, and they will get you the correct answers. And if they don't, you can feel free to leave a message for one of the trustees, and one of the trustees will definitely get you an answer. So having said that, I would make a motion that we, for all future meetings, and we can try this. Before I make the motion, I think we can try this. Let's try it till the end of the year and see how it works. If it doesn't work, we can always modify it, but I think it's a good opportunity for us to I think it's time to at least try in light of the time that we've taken for people to, from the June meeting. I think it's gotten a little out of control. So I'm going to make a motion that we approve, that we change our.
Let me answer.
Let me make my motion. We can do a discussion. I'll make my motion that we change our comment section to 4 minutes per person, and that that's for comments only, no questions, and that that will be afforded all people who have signed up prior to our trustee meeting.
I'll second the motion for discussion purposes.
Okay, I recently spoke at the Hamilton County Commissioners meeting, and somebody gave me their time to mine. So I had the
Where
extra
is it?
time. But we would allow that, we would allow that.
No, we wouldn't,
Why wouldn't you?
because you get 4 minutes.
But if somebody signs up and says, I'm giving my
So,
time to.
it's not like.
That's a precedent that is set in city council and also with the commissioners. They do that.
The city council doesn't do that. The county commissioners may do that at their own discretion, but the city council doesn't do that.
I was there, I worked for city council. I saw it happen.
Okay, well, I'm telling you that we won't do that. I mean, it's not a trading currency.
Wait, let
It's
me
not
just-
something, it's not something where you bring 12 people in and say, I want your 4 minutes, and your
No,
4 minutes,
no.
and your 4 minutes, and you get 48 minutes.
No.
So, I mean, it's not a trading currency, so if you want an opportunity to speak, you get 4 minutes to speak, and I think that's
Let
plenty.
me go with the no question thing. I never answered anybody's questions when they were throwing questions. You were the one that decided to get into the comment back and forth with questions.
That won't happen again.
Okay, so that's just how that happened.
Yep.
Just so you know.
Yep.
Because then I would reserve mine till later or not say anything.
Okay?
Can I ask a question? Would you want to, I didn't even realize how ironic that was. If you have something on the agenda later, would you want to allow comments at that point and maybe with some, 2-minute limitation? In other words, if there's an item on the agenda that a citizen wants to comment on, when you're discussing things, so there would be no more comment after that? Whatever you guys want to do. So you get your 4 minutes
Yes.
at the beginning of the meeting and
Yes.
that, okay.
Okay.
All right. I mean, you can certainly do that.
I mean, if it's a public.
There's no requirement in any public meeting to have public comment.
So, but if we have a public hearing for a zoning case.
I'm not talking about
Yeah,
public
they're gonna
hearing.
have an opportunity to speak. to that.
Absolutely, I'm not talking
Okay.
about that, I'm talking about something that might be on the agenda later that you're discussing.
I'm trying to think of.
A resolution or something.
Okay.
I'm just asking.
One more thing. We've been public speaking opportunities number 3. Now, when I got this from you yesterday and this morning, this was not in there. So this was just added.
That was added yesterday afternoon when I found out about
Okay.
it, along with the NIR presentation.
Okay,
Can I ask a quick question, just to clarify?
yes.
So there's resident comments at the evening meeting per month. What about workshops? I mean, this might be a good time to address that, whether there is or is not.
We normally, if you have a question, I think, you have a question regarding this project, we normally will entertain questions like that, inquiries, and if it relates to the subject we're on.
So that,
But this is a staff meeting, most importantly.
right.
And so we try to limit that. It's not open forum for everybody to come speak, but if there's something you have a question about during the meeting that we're, on the subject we're talking about,
At a workshop.
at a workshop,
Okay.
I think we've been pretty flexible with that, and I don't think there's any
So
reason to
this
change
would,
that.
this just pertains to the evening
Yes,
meetings? Okay.
yes,
Yeah, we've been
Let
pretty
me
good with
just
that.
clarify, it's an
These
open,
meetings have been fine.
yes.
It's just
And,
it's an open meeting, not an open forum for anybody to speak.
Yes.
Obviously,
Yeah.
they're open. I mean, these are regularly scheduled meetings, so anybody knows we meet on the Tuesday mornings also.
Yes, okay, Mr. Porter.
Before you
Yeah.
call for the vote, I just want to state for the record, having past experience with chairing the Thursday evening meetings, and have had experience where the public comments have extended longer than they probably should have. I think that you're in an awkward situation as the chair of that meeting if you're the one who's arbitrarily deciding how long someone talks and when they've talked enough and try to cut off conversation. So I feel like this is a reasonable solution to that issue, and it takes the subjectivity out of it. It puts it on a clock instead. I think that makes sense to do.
Okay.
One more thing, who will be the timekeeper?
That would be great.
You want a shot clock?
Sure. Okay, Mr. Porter.
Mr. Barber,
Aye.
Mr. Connor,
Aye.
Mr. Weedman.
Aye.
Clarification, does that authorize the installation of a clock?
We'll take that, we'll,
I'll figure something out.
Greg will figure it out. We'll give you a full report.
No, what they do, they have a little tone. What they do is they give you a tone to wrap it up, so.
We get an air horn.
Yeah.
But the Court of Appeals has a little light when you have
Yeah.
1 minute left or 2
Yeah.
minutes left, I forget the time frame.
There was a-
We may not have it at the upcoming meeting, but we will transition into a system that works.
I'm bringing an air horn.
I'm okay with that too. Perry, planning and zoning.
Just one update from the trustees. I have been working with other municipalities and trying to get some guidelines for these cell towers in the right of way. Dublin has some pretty nice standards, Liberty Township and also Anderson. So when I get all those together, I'll be submitting them to the township trustees for your approval, at least to review, and then hopefully to put that in our new zoning resolution.
Perfect.
That's all I have.
I had, one of the things that Mr. Marley's situation that you sent a little note over yesterday from the clinical psychologist,
Yeah,
are we gonna follow through with that?
I'm leaving that to Mr. Miller's
Mr. Miller can do
discretion.
that.
Well, I mean, I don't know what to do, Jim, we had a hearing on this at which he attended.
Okay, I just saw that.
You
and I
know,
thought,
Two times.
it's probably been longer than it should have been in terms of getting that building
And
down.
it's an eyesore,
It's terrible,
you know,
so we're moving forward.
okay.
I mean, he was at the hearing, it was given notice of the decision. Harry actually hand-delivered it, I think, to him, if I
Yeah,
remember
over his
correctly.
house in Indian Hill, I hand delivered it, which,
Um,
the house in Indian Hill
Is a wreck.
was the same condition as the house on Kugler. And part of the problem with that, if I can, there's actually a water line that busted in that house. It flooded the basement, it continued to flood the neighbor's property, they then filed a complaint. The village of Indian Hill then pursued legal action, and now they went through the whole process with that home over there in regards to the same thing that we're looking at doing now.
That house is more than an eyesore,
It's
it's flat
Oh,
unhealthy.
it's,
Yeah, it's
Yes.
dangerous.
Yeah, it
Well,
has,
it's-
it has,
it's-
it has to come down. The
And you're
gentleman-
probably going to improve its value. Seriously, I need to know when the lot's clear.
And a question, I got a thing from maybe all day, Matt McGuire. Just wondering if there's a date for the extension of the fire lane, no parking zone on Williams Avenue with the detour caused by the roundabout work, and he goes on. Anyway, this was something that was brought up in March 31st, when he first sent us emails. And, matter of fact, Greg, on June 4th, you and I had talked about it, and, we signed a resolution on this. We did sign a resolution on May 21st for no parking.
I'm sorry, was that for me? I don't.
I'm just-
know anything.
I'm-
Tracy.
It's
Oh,
actually-
I'm sorry,
No, but
okay,
wait,
I'm done.
Well, so we did May 21st for no parking, and at that time, it was gonna take 45 days after they post it and publish it. So I'm just wondering, where we stand with that. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's been posted, it was published twice in the newspaper,
So it's about ready to,
and it's about ready to go.
okay, that's just so I can get back on.
Harry, I just had a question, that gentleman who left his business card yesterday, does he actually officially represent Mr. Marley, or is he just expressing an opinion that Mr. Marley's not competent?
He lived by him, and Mr. Marley's reached out to him in dealing with the village of Indian Hill in regards to what their plan was to his Indian Hill property. So he's not hired by him, he's not under his care, he's a neighbor that felt the need to help Mr. Marley when he reached out to him. So he felt the need to come up to the township because Mr. Marley said, you know, they're gonna be tearing down my house, would you mind talking to them? So that's when he came up and wanted to address the issue with me.
Okay, so that answers what I was trying to express. I just wanted to make sure somebody got back to him, so you know the story. You talked with the clinical
Got back to him.
psychologist. You talked with the man, the clinical psychologist.
Yes.
So that's,
Yeah.
And as far as that stands, Perrin has come in and done studies, environmental study and the asbestos study, reached out to Rainbow Environmental because of the flooding in the basement and the oil sheen on it, they don't know what that is. It can't just be pumped out. So Rainbow doesn't do that. I'm reaching out. I just found that out yesterday, because I was on vacation last week. So I have to reach out to Environmental Enterprise today to have that basement pumped out. Because it has to be pumped into tanks and taken away, because they don't know what it is.
Okay, item number 5, resolution approving the site plan for Grader's Ice Cream Development.
I think Mr. Miller has that.
Yeah, I do have a resolution, but I was not at the public hearing when you had this, but we seem to have run into a problem with the whole issue of using the park as kind of an extension of Grader's outdoor seating, I guess, and I've talked to Tracy, and when we got into this thing with the big belly containers, I started checking into that. First of all, Grader's got a quote on them, and for 2 of them, it's like $14,000. They're, $6,000-7,000 a piece, and I read articles on them, and some places like them, and some places, the maintenance costs are half the cost of the city of Philadelphia. Put in $4 million worth, and at the time the article was written, I don't know what that was, they spent over $2 million in maintenance costs on the thing. I talked to Tracy about it, he was kind of, wasn't overjoyous at the thought of having these things in the park, and Tracy and I got to talking, and it was like, if this is gonna cause a problem with trash, why deal with this with the park anyway? There's a chain that goes across, and I think Grader's, in my discussions with Kevin DeTroy, not Richard is here on behalf of Grader's this morning, it's kinda like, why are we even involving the park with this? If people wanna use it, putting a sidewalk in, almost inviting them over, if it's gonna create a problem that we can't solve with trash. So my thought on it, and maybe recommendation is, take all the park stuff out of there, don't put in the sidewalk. If at some point in the future, it sounds like it's a good idea, then we can talk to Grader's and see what they wanna do, or if they wanna do anything with it, but there's no good solution to the trash situation because these big belly things just don't seem to work. One of the articles said people don't like to use them because they have a handle on it, and the handle gonna have ice cream all over it, and who knows what else, and they don't wanna pull them open to put the stuff in. My thought on it was, what the biggest detriment may be, and maybe why Philadelphia had such problems, is I can see these becoming a challenge to some people as to, what can we crush in this thing now?
Yeah,
And
true.
start putting stuff in that
True.
ends up breaking it, well, let's see if it'll crush this rock. With it out there in the open by itself, I just, for the fact that it's so much money to put these things in the first place, I don't know that it's
Yeah.
worth it.
I don't have any problem after review, because it was my suggestion, after review of the history on these, and I didn't know that much about them, I only knew that they existed. That's why I
Yeah.
had suggested that, because I didn't want our crews to have to, on the weekends, have to go empty those trash barrels. I talked to Tracy yesterday, he thinks that we could potentially be okay if we got the larger trash cans. Is that correct, Trace?
Correct. Like the ones we have at the park, under the pavilion, we have the large, I think they're 55 gallon. Right now, there's one trash can in that park, we empty it once a week, and it's, it might be half full then, so there's not much going on in there now, but we can keep an eye on it.
But if there's an ice cream store next door and there's
Yeah.
access, they'll definitely change.
Right.
And I think we also have during the summer, because don't we run somebody on Sunday because,
Saturday and Sunday mornings, we have somebody that cleans the parks because of rentals.
Okay.
So they can always swing by, and then we would be back in on Monday mornings.
okay. I'm thinking if it's up to you guys, whatever you want to do. If you don't want to create access, we can eliminate access. If you want to allow access, I think that we could get a couple of larger trash cans, which I think would accommodate, but I would definitely require graders to have 2 trash cans on their side of the property in an effort to reduce the amount that goes into the cans in the park. I mean, we have a park, and we certainly like people to use it, but by the same token, we don't want this to be a nightmare for us from a constant cleaning and messes up because nobody threw it in the trash can, threw it on the ground instead.
So are you saying take out the sidewalk to discourage the,
I'm okay with the sidewalk.
I'm with you, Tom.
I'm okay with the sidewalk. I just think we have to be able to have adequate control of what happens in the park as it
Understood,
relates
yeah.
to trash.
Well, just first of all, Graders is at the highest level, appreciates that this is being discussed and this is being communicated, so I don't want you to think this is like a nominal issue. They want a solution that works for everybody. I think the idea of keeping the sidewalk in is a good idea because they're gonna obviously do their site improvement. It'll probably make more sense to, if you want the sidewalk, to put it in when they do the whole site redevelopment. As Tom said, graders will definitely have 2 trash cans right before you enter the park. So as you go in, we're trying to say prominently, here are 2 trash cans. And the graders clientele is probably a little different than how we're imagining it. Most people, I went over into the park, the step, but it's about a 15-second walk if I'm somewhere in the park and I'm walking back. So I'm thinking the normal person, there's always the idiot, the person, but you know, usually these are families, they're coming over and they're having their ice cream and they're done with their cup or something. That's gonna be your concern, not the ice cream cone. And they're gonna think, well, what do I gotta do with it? Very rarely is somebody just gonna throw it on the ground. They're walking back to their car and they're gonna pass our trash cans. So I was gonna say, either if you don't wanna put trash cans in the park, that's fine, because we're gonna put those 2 big ones right at the entrance. If you put the trash cans in, I appreciate we're not going to the big belly solution, because I don't think that was a solution. And again, thanks for your objective analysis on that. But Grader's position is simply, we want to have a solution that works for everybody. I do think keep the sidewalk in. I talked about that specifically with management, and they think they want to have the sidewalk improvement in. They're going to put the cans there right by the entrance on their property. I can tell you de facto, the Grader family is going to be telling their managers, regardless of what's going on, just sort of police the area. They're not going to want to have an area there that looks bad. We talked about, I don't want to make it a policy or